everyone. My name is Mark, and this is going to be a tutorial about the Fatfree PHP Framework. And I'm going to do this tutorial because I started developing a web application. I have a website that's a web shop, and behind this web shop I have a backend system that is based on the PHP and especially the Fatfree framework. And I started developing this site I think a year ago, and I was looking at different frameworks that I could use. First I started with Node.js, but I just didn't like it so much. I got quickly lost in the callback spaghetti. So later on I was looking for something more simple, something more straightforward, easy to learn, and I was looking for a programming language or scripting language that is this is more reusable, and I found, since my website is on WordPress, I found that PHP would be a good option. Let me close my email system so you don't see my email pop-ups anymore. Okay, so during my work I figured out a few ways that make the use of Fatfree framework much easier. I have seen some tips, tricks, methods that help us structure the projects much better and really develop a much more complex solution for our web applications. So what I'm gonna do, I will explain to you the basics of the Fatfree framework, and I will show you how to create projects that are a bit more structured. Right now my own project, I think it has over something like 20,000 code lines. That also includes the third-party libraries as well. But overall I have done a lot of work on it, and it's totally extendable. I really love it. It's easy to work with. So and I just want to make this video because there are only a few Fatfree framework tutorials on the internet at the moment. So I mean, let's get started. Let's see what we can do here. So first of all, in order to use Fatfree framework, we have to add it to our project some way. And there are a lot of, or many different package management systems available or solutions available for PHP. We are going to use Composer because Composer takes care of the dependencies, and I use it every day, and I suggest you use it as well. So in order to install Composer, this is the first step we're going to do. We're gonna go to, I think it's get composer, get composer.org. Okay, here org, and then we go to getting started, and here is where you have the installation instructions. So here you have Linux, Unix, OS, and Windows. So whichever applies to you, pick one and go on and install it. I'm working on OS X. I also use it on Linux. It's pretty easy. You go install it globally because then it will be available to more than one project. So not only in one directory, but in many other directories. So since I already have it installed, as you can see, I start a terminal, I type Composer, and yeah, I get all the options. So it's already installed. So but what you want to do, you just basically copy and paste this into your terminal like that, and then it's going to be downloaded, and then you go to the next line here, you add it to the terminal. But first of all, in order to have the right permissions, you got to do sudo and then type the password, and then there you go. And now what you're supposed to have is, if you type Composer, it's gonna be available and ready. So now that we have this, let's start out with a new project. So let's go to Fatfree framework. I think if you're watching this video, you know that this website exists. This is the home of Fatfree framework, and I usually use the user guide side here, this page. This page is pretty cool because it explains most of the concepts of the Fatfree framework. So you get a complete getting started here. You get the routing engine, the variables. You can read it for yourself as well. for everyday work, these are very useful, and I come back here regularly, I mean many times a day, and check out a few things. The API reference is useful when you are already familiar with the framework itself, you know what you're looking for, then you can go into these parts respectively and check certain concepts and check some details and so on. So first, let's start with this one, and I'm going to use it here for two reasons. The first reason is that if you are just starting out, I think it's very useful for you if I show you where you can find the information that you need. So that's why I'm going to use it. And the second reason why I'm using it, because I don't know all these things from the top of my head. So let's check it out. So what we're going to do now, first of all, we're going to create a new project. So let's go to your development folder. I go to mine here right now, and I think I have a tutorials folder and a Fatfree under that. Fatfree, so this is my folder here, and I'm gonna, okay, I have a project already created. So create your first project directory here, and you see this directory is completely empty. This is the first base directory of this tutorial. So this is my project folder. And what I'm gonna do, I go composer and init. This is the first step that we do. What it does, it will create a project that uses Composer. So it's gonna be a PHP project using Composer. And please do this with me. If you hit enter, you will see some questions. And this is coming from Composer. What you need to do, you need to specify a vendor name and the name of the project itself. And I'm using, this is the default value. If I hit enter, yeah, it's usually not working. So let's do it. I will do it myself. Okay, and then say Fatfree tutorial 1. Okay, description, I skip that. Author, that's again me. So please give this information. Yes, sometimes if you just hit enter, it will use the default values that you see in yellow. Sometimes it doesn't. I don't exactly know the logic behind this, but doesn't really matter, right? So we just fill in the necessary fields, and then we click yes. No, we click no, because we don't want to add the packages right now. We want to add them later. And okay, so what you see here, this is going to be the config file of Composer, is a Composer JSON, and this is going to be the contents of it. Pretty straightforward. So you confirm generation, yes. We click enter. And then let's list the contents of this folder again. And you see there's a Composer JSON here. So what we're gonna do now, what we need to add the Fatfree framework. And what we have basically, this one file is just a configuration file of Composer, meaning that this is a new project folder. It's an empty project with a Composer configuration file initialized. And we are ready to add third-party libraries to this project. This is the state we are in, okay? So let's open up our favorite text editor. For me, it's Sublime Text. Bang, there we go. And this is the Composer JSON file that we just created in this folder. And what I'm gonna do now, in the require section here, I'm going to add the Fatfree framework. So we go online again. We go to getcomposer.org. All right. We go to the packages here. All right, what's going on? Oh, thank you very much. So let's go back to the packages. So we are now on the Composer page, and we say Fatfree, and this one here, this is the official Fatfree framework. So what we're gonna do, you see this is the composer require. So we copy and paste this text. Okay, we copy and paste this text, whatever this is. We go back to the text editor and we only need the package name and author here. And we have to specify the version that we want to use. So that works in a way that you come back here to the composer page, and here you have the different versions. So whatever version you specify here, you can specify to take one of these versions, add them to the text file, and composer will use that version. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna use the latest stable version 350. Okay, so we save this, then we move back to terminal. So what we have done in this text file, by adding Fatfree, the package name and the version number, what we did, we just said to composer that this is a third-party library that we want to use in this project. So what we need to do now that we specify this, we need to make sure that composer somehow adds these files, this library to our project. And we're gonna do that from here, from the terminal, by just typing composer update. And composer update, what it will do, it will take the JSON file, take the information inside, and if it sees a package name there, it will download it and add it to your project. So if we hit enter, bang, let's do it and see what comes. I'm sure it's gonna happen. And it's happening. It usually does happen. So it's loading, installing, you see? And suddenly, let's check out what's in the directory here. Suddenly, you see a vendor directory in our project directory. Interesting, right? So let's minimize this. I minimize the terminal. And let's come back to Sublime Text. Actually, it looks a bit ugly because my theme got updated in the meanwhile. I don't know if you've seen this. I'm sorry about this. If I would restart this, then it probably would go away. So whatever. So this is the project folder, this is the vendor, third-party libraries, and this was just now added, downloaded, and installed by Composer. So let's open this up. You see this is the Fatfree library just right under my mouse. And you see another folder here. This is Composer. This was added by Composer. And what is important that next to Composer there's an auto load PHP. If I open this up, it's a very important file because this is going to auto load whatever third-party libraries you have. There are some classes in those third-party libraries, and this auto load will make sure if you include this file in your PHP, whatever file you use in PHP, if in your PHP code you include this file, that means that Composer will automatically include the classes as they're required in your own code. So you don't need to do a lot of specific requires, because you have this one statement. With one statement you can take care of the third-party library inclusion. So this is pretty useful, pretty lovely. It happened to me that it didn't work in my environment. I use OpenShift by Red Hat. We will probably see it later. So I use it, and it happened to me that it wasn't working, and autoload somehow just failed, and I had to add some of my files manually, but that was an exception. I take it as an exception. Normally it should be working, and right now on this tutorial in local host, it's definitely gotta be working. Okay, so now we have the Fatfree framework installed. So let's see what we got. Let's open up the framework. You got Fatfree here, you have some PHP files here, and the lib folder is pretty important. This is the one that I use the most, and I tell you why. So I'm not just using Fatfree framework by going to this documentation site, and reading what's on the page. I use Fatfree Framework by reading the code. And if you are an experienced programmer, it's probably not a big surprise to you that I'm doing this. If you are not so experienced, don't worry, it's not really rocket science. You just gotta understand somebody else's code. It's not always easy, of course. So in the Fatfree Framework, base PHP is the file to start with. We open up base PHP, and surprisingly, this is the base of the whole thing. And it includes two classes. Okay, this is an abstract class called prefab, and I don't want to explain every line. That's not the point. The point is to show you a few places to check a few things. So Fatfree works in a way that its base class extends here on this line, extends this prefab class, and this is a singleton, and a singleton means that there is only one instance of the base class at any time runtime. So meaning that you don't create new instances just in an ad hoc manner. This means that there is one instance of this. When you start up the whole server, there's gonna be one base class, and all your context variables, whatever you do, everything is gonna be stored in this one class. And if you need to access something in the base, you will always get an instance or the instance of the same base class. And this is important because whatever you do, you configure the routing, you configure whatever session variables, you configure whatever you need. It's gonna be there. It's gonna be transparent. So if you get an instance, if you get the instance, it should be in the instance. All right. So if you just have a quick look, what's pretty important here that these are some constants, and what I want to show you again here, globals, the hive. So if you read the code of the Fatfree framework, if you want to understand how things work, and you see the hive, you will see the hive a lot of times. And this is the reason, because this is a private variable of the base class, and this is where we store all the globals. So a lot of stuff that you do will be added to this variable. I think the best description of this would be that this stores all the parameters, all the properties of the context that you have in your application. So your application context, whatever that is, will be here somehow. So it's like a big bucket. You throw stuff in, and later on you can get stuff out. All right. So what I also want to show you, okay, there are a lot of functions in this. It's pretty long if you look at the scroll bar. Set is an important one. Set will set variables. So you can set your own variables. You define the key and you define the value. These are key value pairs, right? And you can set them into the base context. And this is come very handy later on. Okay, you can, of course, if you set something, you can get the same thing. Pretty cool, right? And then let me show you something else. All right. Not these things here. Stringify. Okay, these are more like utility functions. And okay, let's do something else. So what we're gonna do first, there's a function called run that I want to show you. So the function run, this is the function that we need to call to make Fatfree work. So that means when we're gonna do this just in a minute, that we're gonna create a new file, an index.php, that's gonna be the first index file of our project. And in that project, what we need to do, the bare minimum we gotta do is to include the base, we gotta get an instance of that base, and after that we just go and run it. And if we run it, that means that the whole system is gonna start up. We're gonna have a server running, and this is the function that does the running itself. All right, so let's go back to our project here, and in our project folder, just directly here, let's create our file index.php. Bang. So if you see, we have created this one file, and let's come back here, index.php. We have our index file. So let's start out. Let's first of all, we go and say, okay, this is gonna be PHP. Then we require require once, and then what we're gonna do, we require vendor /load php. Okay, so this is under vendor and auto load php. Okay, so this is what we did. And now what we need to have a variable for the Fatfree framework. So this is when we get the instance of the Fatfree framework. It is usually called F3 for historical reasons. This is the terminology that is used. All right, so if you come to the documentation here, it will tell you something very similar. Okay, so tell you what is the difference. In here, what we have, we started a PHP file, and then we require the base PHP, right? And in our case, we do it differently because we require an auto load because we are using Composer, and this one here will return an instance here of the base. So in our case, we gotta do it differently because we gotta have a base instance. So this is not gonna give us a base instance. What we gotta do, we gotta go to the base and we gotta invoke this function here, instance. So base instance. All right, and this is a static function. So let's hope it works this way. And then what we gotta do here, we go to that instance and we run Fatfree. All right, so let's come back here and let's start our PHP server on this address. This is the built-in PHP server. So if you are wondering what I'm doing here, that from a certain version of PHP, I don't know from the top of my head, but in 5.5.20 here, definitely there is a built-in web server in PHP. So if you use this command, you can start it up. This is the address where it's starting. So you don't need any other web server, just this one. And for our testing purposes, it's gonna be completely all right. So if you come here, we won't see anything really special. Sorry, especially not like this. So if we come here and go to localhost, we won't see much because no route specified. Okay, so this is an error message, which means it's a good sign it's coming from the Fatfree framework. So let's specify a route. This is what we're gonna do. So if you go to the getting started material, you see that we got an instance of Fatfree. You saw that we also invoked run, which means that our server is running but it's not doing anything. And in order to change that, we gonna add one route. And if you're wondering what is that, what is this concept, and why are we doing this, I mean, if you're familiar with other frameworks like Node.js, you know what's going on. If you're not, then I will tell you. So what is going on is that if you go to the web browser or you use some other code to invoke an API, what you do here, you use the routing engine of Fatfree. And that routing engine means that this is the address that I invoke. The address meaning that here on top of localhost I can define any kind of other address here, and when I invoke that address, meaning I send a request to that address, then something will be happening. So if I send a get HTTP request to this address, which basically means localhost and this port here, then this is going to happen, meaning that this lovely system will echo these two words, right? So let's try it. So I did one route, I hit enter, and you see it's there, hello world. Just to make your life a little bit easier, let's add another one. Let's do whatever you like. I mean, okay, let's go to tutorial and then hello world, hello tutorial. All right, just to make sure that you understand what's going on. So this is the address. So I copy that here, tutorial, and it goes hello tutorial. Haha. Okay, so you see, this is basically one of the key things why we use this, because it has a routing engine. And as you're building something more complex, a routing engine is a pretty basic requirement that you need to have. All right. So what we have now, we have this one file. Let me delete this because I just want to have the bare minimum. So we have this file, we have included the auto load. All right. We have an instance of the base, meaning that this variable from now on represents Fatfree Framework base. And that's why it's useful that we have seen the source code for this, because now you know more or less what it does. It's just a class that stores whatever you put inside. And what we put inside with the route function of the base class here, we added that this address should translate to this code. And now that we added that, and after that we run the whole system, then it's gonna be displaying this message if I send a request to this address. So now probably it's clear for you, maybe it's not, but if it's not clear for you, then let me explain that what we have seen is pretty obvious, that a run needs to come after we configure this route. You see, you know why I'm saying this, because run is the function that runs the whole system. And what we're doing before, we're just basically configuring the future behavior of our server, our application. So our code is basically configuring the server, and here we are running a server. So after we run, only after we run this, will it take requests and respond to requests. So if I just, if I comment this out, I definitely should purchase this. This is very important, guys, that you should purchase Sublime Text because it's great. And I'm definitely gonna do this. So I commented this out, and you see nothing is happening. I mean, okay, of course this is something that we expected, but it's very important to understand how the framework works, because of course you may think that I'm stupid and everybody knows this. If you comment this out, then nothing will happen. Fine, of course. But if you come to a moment when you gotta read the code of the framework to understand how you should approach the solutions of your own problems, then you better understand how the thing works. And the thing works in a way that you configure with the function in the base class, you set up the behavior, and then you run it. So if you understand this basic concept, then it's pretty clear that everything that you do should be before the run. And that's important because from the next lesson on, we are not going to use only one file. We're going to use many files, and we're gonna set up a project with a lot of different things. We're gonna set up, you know, an MVC approach like model view controller. We're gonna add controllers. We're gonna add view templates. We're gonna add models, and what's more, we're gonna do some abstraction. We're gonna do a base class for controllers, and then every other controller we have will extend that class, and you will see how that helps us build a complex and yet very simple solution based on the Fatfree framework. So see you